The last stand begins. The galaxy burns. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, watching the death of civilizations unfold before her eyes. Through the massive view screen, the wreckage of Proxima Station drifted like metallic snow against the star-filled void. What had once been the galaxy's most formidable defense platform was now nothing more than twisted metal and fading energy signatures. The battle had lasted exactly 47 minutes. 47 minutes for the Zarathi Collective to reduce the combined fleets of 12 species to cosmic debris. Sarah had watched it all from their hidden position behind Proxima's outer moon, following strict orders to observe and report, not to engage, not to help, just to watch as thousands of ships and millions of lives were erased from existence. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command," announced Lieutenant James Park, the ship's communications officer. His voice carried the weight of exhaustion that had settled over the entire crew. They had been running for 3 months, jumping from system to system, always one step ahead of the Zarathi advance. "Put it through," Sarah replied, her hands gripping the armrests of her command chair. She knew what was coming, the same message they had received after every other defeat. Retreat, regroup, survive to fight another day. But there were no more days left to fight. Admiral Rebecca Chen's hologram materialized on the bridge. The woman who had once commanded humanity's entire space fleet now looked like she had aged a decade in the past year. Her uniform was still crisp, but her eyes held the hollow look of someone who had watched their entire world crumble. "Sarah," Admiral Chen began, her voice steady despite everything, "I'm sure you witnessed what happened at Proxima. The Valdrani Armada, the Centauri Defense Corps, the Alta, Irian Fleet Command, all gone. The Zarathi didn't lose a single vessel." Sarah nodded grimly. She had seen this pattern repeated across a dozen systems. The Zarathi would arrive with their massive, crystalline ships that seemed to bend space around them. They would demand surrender. When refused, they would unleash weapons that seemed to ignore conventional defenses entirely. Energy shields meant nothing. Armor plating dissolved like paper. Even the most advanced AI-controlled point defense systems couldn't track their weapons. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Fall back to the Titan shipyards. We're consolidating what's left of the fleet there." Admiral Chen paused, and for a moment her composure slipped. "Sarah, we have 17 ships left, 17 ships out of the 3,000 we started with. The Zarathi have broken the back of galactic civilization in less than 8 months. 17 ships. Sarah felt the number hit her like a physical blow. The UES Resilience was a heavy cruiser, one of humanity's newest and most advanced vessels. At full strength, humanity's fleet had numbered nearly 400 ships. Now they were down to 17, and most of those were damaged. "Admiral, there has to be something we can do, some weakness we haven't found yet. The Zarathi technology can't be perfect." Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. "Sarah, you sound like your father. He always believed there was a solution to every problem if you just looked hard enough." Sarah's father, Admiral Marcus Mitchell, had died at the Battle of Wolf 359, taking his flagship and 2,000 crew members with him in a desperate ramming attack that hadn't even scratched the Zarathi vessel's hull. "Maybe he was right," Sarah said quietly. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and her crew. She walked to the view screen and stared out at the debris field that had once been hope for the galaxy. Somewhere in that wreckage were the remains of ships from species that had mastered faster-than-light travel when humanity was still learning to make fire. Civilizations with technology so advanced it seemed like magic to human engineers. All of them had fallen to the same enemy. "Captain," called out Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's chief science officer, "you need to see this. I've been analyzing the sensor data from the battle and I think I found something." Sarah turned from the view screen. Dr. Rodriguez was one of the brightest xenoarchaeologists in human space, recruited for the Resilience because of her expertise in alien technology. If anyone could find a weakness in the Zarathi, it would be her. "What do you have, Elena?" Dr. Rodriguez activated the holographic display in the center of the bridge. The image showed a detailed scan of a Zarathi warship. its crystalline structure pulsing with internal energy. "Look at this energy pattern here," she said, pointing to a section near the ship's core. "Every time they fire their primary weapon, there's a brief fluctuation in their defensive matrix. It only lasts for 0.3 seconds, but during that window, their shields are completely down." Sarah studied the display. 0.3 seconds isn't enough time to target and fire conventional weapons. "No, it isn't," Dr. Rodriguez agreed. "But Captain, I don't think the Zarathi have ever faced conventional weapons. Every species they've conquered has used the same type of technology. Energy-based weapons, gravitic missiles, quantum torpedoes, all very advanced, all very predictable." Sarah began to see where this was leading. "But humans develop differently." Exactly. While other species perfected energy weapons thousands of years ago, humans kept using kinetic weapons well into the space age. We still use them today because they're reliable and simple. The Zarathi might not have defensive protocols for weapons that are essentially very fast rocks. Commander David Torres, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from his station. "Captain, are you suggesting we fight crystalline ships with bullets?" "Not bullets," Sarah said slowly, her mind racing. "But the principle is the same. Elena, what would happen if we hit them with a kinetic impactor during that 0.3-second window?" Dr. Rodriguez manipulated the holographic display, running calculations in real time. "Theoretically, it could work, but we would need perfect timing, and we would need something moving fast enough to reach the target before their shields came back online." Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. "I know exactly what we need. Torres, plot a course for the asteroid mining station Alpha 7, maximum burn." "Captain, that's in the opposite direction from the Titan shipyards," Commander Torres pointed out. "I know. Send a message to Admiral Chen. Tell her the Resilience has a new mission." 3 hours later, the UES Resilience was docked at mining station Alpha 7, a massive facility built into a hollowed-out asteroid. The station's commander, a gruff former military officer named Captain Jake Morrison, met them at the airlock. "Sarah Mitchell," he said with a tired smile. "Heard you were running with what's left of the fleet. What brings you to my little corner of nowhere?" Sarah shook his hand. "Jake, I need to borrow some of your equipment, specifically your mass drivers." Captain Morrison raised an eyebrow. Mining stations used mass drivers to launch processed ore to collection ships. They were essentially enormous railguns designed to accelerate chunks of refined metal to significant fractions of light speed. "What do you plan to do with industrial mining equipment?" "Fight a war," Sarah replied. Over the next 6 hours, the Resilience underwent the most unusual retrofit in naval history. The mining station's engineers worked alongside the ship's crew to mount 3 industrial mass drivers along the cruiser's hull. These weapons were massive, crude, and completely unlike anything in the modern galactic arsenal. Dr. Rodriguez had calculated that tungsten rods accelerated to 15% of light speed would have enough kinetic energy to penetrate Zarathi defenses during their vulnerability window. The challenge would be timing the shots perfectly. "Captain," Lieutenant Park called out as the modifications neared completion, "we're receiving an emergency transmission from Earth. The Zarathi fleet has been detected entering the Sol system. They'll reach Earth in 18 hours. Sarah felt her heart sink. Earth, humanity's homeworld, with its 4 billion inhabitants, was about to face the same fate as every other world the Zarathi had conquered. The 17 remaining human ships at Titan shipyards wouldn't be enough to stop them. "Jake," Sarah Esses, aide to the mining station commander, "I need to ask one more favor." 30 minutes later, the UES Resilience was accelerating toward Earth at maximum burn, followed by 6 mining ships loaded with tungsten rods and volunteers from the station crew. It wasn't much of a fleet, but it was what they had. As they traveled through hyperspace, Sarah gathered her crew in the main briefing room. The faces looking back at her represented the best of humanity. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, and miners who had volunteered to face impossible odds. "I won't lie to you," Sarah began. "What we're about to attempt has never been tried before. We're going to fight the most advanced military force in the galaxy using mining equipment and outdated kinetic weapons. The odds of success are minimal, the odds of survival are even lower. She paused, looking each crew member in the eye. But sometimes the impossible becomes possible when you have nothing left to lose. The Zarathi have conquered hundreds of worlds. They've destroyed thousands of ships. They've never been defeated. But they've also never faced humanity's greatest weapon. "What weapon is that, Captain?" asked Ensign Maria Santos, the ship's newest officer. Sarah smiled. "Our stubborn refusal to give up. Humans have a long history of fighting battles we can't win simply because we don't know any better. Today we're going to show the galaxy what that stubbornness can accomplish." The ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system to find a scene of devastation. The Zarathi fleet hung in space like malevolent jewels, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of Earth's sun. 17 human ships were scattered across local space, some dead in the water, others fighting hopeless running battles against an enemy they couldn't hurt. "Captain Admiral Chen is hailing us," Lieutenant Park reported. Admiral Chen's hologram appeared, and Sarah could see the bridge of the UES Constitution behind her. Smoke filled the air, and sparks flew from damaged consoles. "Sarah, what are you doing here? I ordered you to fall back." "With respect, Admiral, Earth is my home too. We're not running anymore." "Sarah, these mining ships won't last 5 minutes against Zarathi weapons." "They don't need to last 5 minutes," Sarah replied. "They just need to last long enough to get in range. Admiral, order all remaining ships to coordinate their attacks. We need the Zarathi to fire their main weapons simultaneously. Dr. Rodriguez will transmit the timing requirements." Admiral Chen stared at her for a moment, then nodded. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Coordinate with the Resilience. We're making our stand here." The battle began 40 minutes later. The surviving human ships formed a loose formation, drawing fire from the Zarathi fleet. Sarah watched the tactical display as enemy weapons tore through human shields like they were made of paper. The destroyer UES Ranger exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The cruiser UES Defiant lost main power and began drifting. "Timing window approaching," Dr. Rodriguez announced. "All Zarathi ships are charging their main weapons. Impact in 5 seconds." "All mining ships prepare to fire," Sarah ordered. "Target the lead Zarathi vessel. Fire on my mark." The moment seemed to stretch forever. Sarah watched the tactical display as the Zarathi weapons built up to full charge. At the exact moment they fired, their defensive shields would drop for 0.3 seconds. "Mark!" Sarah shouted. 6 mining ships fired simultaneously, launching tungsten rods at 15% of light speed toward the lead Zarathi vessel. The rods covered the distance in less than a second, striking the alien ship just as its shields flickered offline. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The Zarathi ship's crystalline hull cracked like glass, internal explosions cascading through its structure. For the first time in recorded history, a Zarathi vessel had been destroyed in battle. The alien fleet's response was swift and terrible. Energy beams lashed out, destroying 3 of the mining ships instantly. But the damage was done. The galaxy's most feared fleet had shown they could bleed. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from across the system," Lieutenant Park reported, his voice filled with excitement. "Every ship in the fleet saw what just happened. They know the Zarathi can be beaten." Sarah smiled grimly. 1 ship down, 23 to go. The odds were still impossible, but for the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Against all odds, the galaxy watches. News of the Zarathi ship's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved populations looked up at their crystal-clear skies and dared to hope. In hidden bases and refugee camps, resistance fighters who had given up months ago began cleaning their weapons again. The impossible had happened. The Zarathi could be killed. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, watching as the remaining Zarathi fleet regrouped. 23 crystalline ships hung in space like angry diamonds, their internal energy patterns shifting to configurations no human had ever seen before. They were adapting, learning from their loss. "Captain, we're being hailed by the lead Zarathi vessel," Lieutenant Park announced, his voice tense with anticipation. In 8 months of war, The Zarathi had never communicated directly with their enemies. They simply arrived, demanded surrender, and destroyed those who refused. "Put it through," Sarah ordered. The view screen filled with an image that made several crew members take involuntary steps backward. The Zarathi were not the insectoid creatures many had theorized about, nor were they energy beings as others had suggested. They were something far more disturbing. The entity on the screen appeared to be made of the same crystalline material as their ships, but it pulsed with organic life. Geometric patterns of light flowed beneath its translucent surface, and what might have been eyes glowed with cold intelligence. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonic frequencies that made the bridge bulkheads vibrate. "Small creatures of carbon and water," the Zarathi said, its words somehow translating perfectly into human language. "You have demonstrated an unexpected capability. This is curious to us." Sarah stepped forward, fighting every instinct that told her to flee. "I am Captain Sarah Mitchell of the United Earthship Resilience. You are invading our territory and threatening our people. Withdraw from this system immediately." The Zarathi entity's light patterns shifted, and Sarah realized it was studying her with the same intensity a scientist might examine an interesting specimen. "We are the Zarathi Collective. We have existed for 1 million of your years. We have consumed the achievements of 10,000 civilizations. Your resistance is meaningless." "If our resistance is meaningless, then why are you talking to us?" Sarah challenged. "In 8 months of conquest, you've never communicated with your enemies before. We destroyed one of your ships and suddenly you want to chat. That tells me we've got your attention." The Zarathi was quiet for a moment, its internal light patterns flickering in what might have been confusion or calculation. "Your species uses primitive kinetic weapons. This was not anticipated in our predictive algorithms. You fight with rocks and chemical explosives, while others use quantum fields and gravitic manipulators. This inconsistency is troubling." Dr. Rodriguez stepped up beside Sarah. "That's because humanity developed differently than the other species you've conquered. We never abandon kinetic weapons completely because they work. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution." "Simplicity," the Zarathi repeated, as if the word was foreign to its understanding. "Our collective consciousness has analyzed the technological development patterns of every species in this galaxy. All follow predictable paths from chemical energy to nuclear energy to quantum manipulation. Humanity's path is chaotic, unpredictable. This creates variables we cannot account for." Sarah began to understand. The Zarathi weren't just technologically superior, they were predictable in their superiority. They had conquered thousands of civilizations by learning their patterns, adapting to their technologies, and overwhelming their defenses. But humanity's chaotic development path didn't fit their models. "Commander Torres, tactical assessment," Sarah ordered quietly. Commander Torres consulted his displays. "Captain, the Zarathi fleet is repositioning. They're forming a spherical formation around our position, classical encirclement pattern." Sarah nodded. Even when faced with the unexpected, the Zarathi fell back on proven tactical doctrine. That predictability might be their weakness. "Admiral Chen, are you monitoring this conversation?" Sarah asked. Admiral Chen's voice came over the comm system. "Every word, Sarah. I'm thinking the same thing you are. If they're predictable in their tactics, we might be able to use that against them." The Zarathi entity on the screen seemed to sense the tactical discussion happening among the human fleet. "Your coordination is inefficient. Multiple command structures create confusion and delay response times. The collective operates with perfect unity of purpose." "Perfect unity is another word for predictability," Sarah replied. "And predictability is a weakness when your enemy refuses to follow the same patterns you expect." She turned to address her bridge crew, but spoke loudly enough for the Zarathi to hear every word. "All remaining mining ships, disperse to random positions. Don't follow any predetermined pattern. Let chaos be your guide. Admiral Chen, order all fleet vessels to break formation and engage in individual tactical decisions. No coordination, no battle plans, just controlled chaos." The Zarathi entity's light patterns flickered rapidly. This is tactically unsound. Uncoordinated attacks will result in maximum casualties with minimal effect. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But you've never faced uncoordinated attacks before, have you? Every species you've conquered fought with disciplined formations and coordinated battle plans. How do you adapt to pure chaos? The answer came 30 seconds later when the human fleet abandoned all military doctrine and attacked. Ships moved in random patterns, firing at unpredictable intervals. Mining vessels launched tungsten rods at seemingly arbitrary targets. The destroyer UES Phoenix performed a combat maneuver that would have gotten its captain court-martialed under normal circumstances, spinning end over end while firing its point defense systems at a Zarathi ship's presumed weapon ports. The effect on the Zarathi fleet was immediate and dramatic. Their crystalline ships began moving in hesitant, stuttering patterns as their predictive algorithms struggled to process the tactical chaos. For the first time in recorded history, the Zarathi were reacting instead of acting. Their energy patterns are fluctuating, Dr. Rodriguez reported. The collective consciousness is having trouble processing multiple unpredictable variables simultaneously. Sarah watched as human ships weaved through space like drunken dancers, somehow managing to avoid both enemy fire and each other through pure luck and skill. It was the most beautiful disaster she had ever seen. Captain, mining ship Terra Nova is reporting a successful kinetic impact on Zarathi Vessel 7, Commander Torres announced. Confirmed kill. 2 Zarathi ships destroyed. Sarah felt a surge of hope, but she knew they needed more than individual victories. They needed to break the collective's ability to adapt entirely. Dr. Rodriguez, what would happen if we overloaded their predictive algorithms, fed them so much chaotic data that their systems couldn't process it all? The scientist's eyes widened with understanding. Captain, if we could generate enough unpredictable variables simultaneously, we might cause a cascade failure in their collective consciousness. But it would require every human ship to act completely independently, with no coordination whatsoever. Admiral Chen, did you hear that? Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the comm. I heard it, Sarah. All ships, this is your final order. Forget everything you learned at the academy. Forget protocol, forget tactics, forget coordination. Fight like humans. Fight dirty, fight crazy, fight like your lives and your planet depend on it. What followed was the most chaotic battle in galactic history. Human ships attacked from impossible angles, using mining equipment, construction tools, and in one memorable case, a cargo container full of frozen methane as improvised weapons. The cruiser UES Tokyo performed a slingshot maneuver around Earth's moon that should have torn the ship apart, but instead gave it enough velocity to ram a Zarathi vessel at significant fraction of light speed. The mining ship New Prospector attached magnetic mines to its hull and rammed into a Zarathi ship, detonating both vessels in a brilliant explosion that could be seen from Earth's surface. The destroyer UES Courage fired its entire complement of life pods at enemy ships, each pod equipped with small nuclear charges that detonated on impact. Through it all, Sarah watched the Zarathi fleet's formations become increasingly erratic. Their ships began firing at empty space, their predictive algorithms completely overwhelmed by the tactical chaos humanity had unleashed. Captain, we're seeing massive energy fluctuations across the entire Zarathi fleet, Dr. Rodriguez reported. I think their collective consciousness is breaking down. On the view screen, the Zarathi entity that had spoken to them earlier flickered like a malfunctioning hologram. Its light patterns had become chaotic, random, almost desperate. Unknown variables. Cannot process. Tactical chaos beyond computational parameters. The entity's voice distorted as it spoke. How do you fight without order? How do you function without unity? This is not possible according to our understanding of warfare. Sarah smiled grimly. That's the thing about humanity. We specialize in the impossible. We've been doing the impossible for thousands of years, and we're not about to stop now. The breakthrough came when the mining ship Asteroid Runner, commanded by Captain Jake Emmem, Orison himself performed what would later be called the Morrison Maneuver. Instead of attacking a Zarathi ship directly, he used his mining equipment to grab a large piece of debris from the earlier battle and hurled it in a complex arc that ricocheted off two different ships before striking a third. The randomness of the attack was so completely unpredictable that the targeted Zarathi vessel's defensive systems simply shut down. The debris, nothing more than a chunk of twisted metal, punched through the crystalline hull and triggered a cascade failure that destroyed the entire ship. "That's it!" Dr. Rodriguez shouted. "Captain, I'm reading massive system failures across the entire Zarathi fleet. Their collective consciousness can't handle true randomness. It's like trying to calculate the exact position of every molecule in a gas cloud." Sarah watched as Zarathi ships began exploding without being directly attacked. Their own systems were failing as their collective consciousness collapsed under the weight of too much unpredictable data. "All human vessels continue random attack patterns," Sarah ordered. "Don't let them adapt. Keep them guessing." The final phase of the battle lasted only minutes. One by one, Zarathi ships succumbed to cascade failures as their collective consciousness fragmented. Some exploded violently, others simply went dark and drifted lifeless through space. The most advanced military force in the galaxy was defeated by chaos, confusion, and humanity's stubborn refusal to follow the rules. When the last Zarathi ship went dark, a silence fell over the solar system that seemed to stretch across the galaxy itself. On the bridge of the UES Resilience, Sarah's crew stared at their tactical displays in amazement. "Captain," Lieutenant Park said quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The Zarathi forces occupying other systems are withdrawing. Their entire fleet is in retreat." Sarah sank into her command chair, suddenly feeling the weight of exhaustion that had been held at bay by adrenaline and desperation. They had done it. Somehow, impossibly, they had won. Admiral Chen's hologram appeared on the bridge, her face showing a mixture of disbelief and joy. "Sarah, do you realize what you've accomplished? You didn't just save Earth, you saved every enslaved world in the galaxy. The Zarathi collective is broken." "We all did it, Admiral," Sarah replied. "Every ship, every crew member, every crazy tactical decision that should never have worked. Humanity didn't win because we were stronger or smarter. We won because we were too chaotic for them to understand." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her sensor readings. "Captain, I'm detecting something interesting in the debris field. Some of the Zarathi ships are still intact but powerless. If we could study their technology." Sarah nodded. The victory was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had proven that the impossible was possible, that the greatest military force in the galaxy could be defeated by stubborn determination and tactical chaos. As the UES Resilience moved through the debris field to begin recovery operations, Sarah looked out at the stars and wondered what other impossible challenges awaited humanity among them. Whatever they were, she was confident that her species would face them the same way they had faced the Zarathi, with courage, creativity, and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy would never be the same.